Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the replay of our masterclass, Why Change Keeps Backfiring. This masterclass explains why you keep defaulting back to old patterns, behaviors, even though you've done years of healing. Tonight, or today's conversation, we are going to really dive into this. And it's a conversation that really matters a lot to me, because the person that finds themselves here is a specific kind of person. The person that has actually put in a lot of effort to changing their life. They've done a lot of work. They've reflected and they've healed and they've gained a lot of self-awareness. You can see your patterns and you can name your triggers, and you're not new to this. And yet when it actually matters, when you try and live differently or from a new inner knowing, something slightly happens, and it really stops you really being able to live the life that you want to live. And it can get quite confusing and very frustrating. So this masterclass is here because I want to show you why. I want to give you language for why this keeps happening. And this isn't a motivational talk. It's not here to help you push harder. It's not here to fix you. It's an explanation, a theory as to what is going on. And it's come from my lived experiences. I lived, and we'll go into it later, but I lived from this, and I had to work out what was going on in order to change my life. And the reason for this is because a lot of people, what you have been calling fear or resistance is actually something else. And when you understand the difference between that, change can actually start being sustainable for you. So just to cover off what we're going to cover today, why change backfires under pressure, which is, I call pressure is like real world situations. Why healing doesn't automatically translate into a lived behavior, and what actually stabilizes change so that it actually sticks in your life, so it can be consistent, so you can rely on it. And then at the end, I will go into how I support this phase, because as I said before, I'm deeply passionate about moving people from the healing space into a living space. And I stayed here for too long, and I've come up with a framework that will enable you to move out of this phase a lot quicker. But we'll go into that at the end. So the next ones, before we dive in, let's just do a little bit of a grounding meditation. So taking a deep breath in, holding at the top before exhaling. Again, on a deep inhale, breathing from your root chakra, belly, chest, all the way to the top of the head. Holding and then letting go all the way down. You might like to roll your shoulders back and down, moving your neck, opening your jaw. There's a very good trick with the jaw. The jaw holds a lot of attention, but it also helps you move from your head into your body. So if you open your jaw quite wide, it really helps you move the energy. Okay, just coming into your body, sinking down into your heart. Imagine roots growing out of your heart, down into your torso, into your legs, your thighs, down past your knees, all the way down through your ankles and feet into the earth. And those roots from your heart are going down, down, and a bit further down into the core of the earth. And then you're going to wrap them around the core of the earth 3 times anti-clockwise, really anchoring you down into the earth, pulling the roots tight so you feel a tight tug on your tailbone, energetically pulling you into the earth. Taking a deep breath in here and sighing it out as that energy moves from the earth back up into your heart, anchoring you in your body, in this space, and this moment. Take one large, deep breath, sighing it out. And when you're ready, opening your eyes and coming back into the room. Okay, so the next part of the conversation is I did want to take a moment here to be clear about who this conversation is for, because this talk isn't about a personal growth and it isn't for everyone. This isn't for beginners and it's not for someone in crisis or someone that still needs to unpack the past. And that is a deeply personal place to be. And I spent a long time here. But what I'm really passionate about now, as I've covered a couple of times, is that I really want to start talking about the phase after healing, when you've done enough work to start living your life, right? You have enough awareness and you know who you are, and yet your life hasn't reorganized around this. You don't have the language or the understanding to be able to live the life that reflects who you truly are. And I'll say this many times throughout the entire conversation today, but it's not because you're blocked. It's not because you're not ready. And it's not because healing didn't do its work, but because this particular phase, the phase after healing, requires something different. It needs a different developmental phase, not more healing. And if you're here and you've been quietly confused about why your life really hasn't shifted, given the amount of reflection and inner work you've done, then you're going to enjoy this conversation. This conversation is specifically designed to orientate you to exactly what is happening in the moments. Right. Now that we're orientated, we've clarified a number of different things. I want to name that question that haunts you and haunted me for a very long time. And the question behind the entire masterclass, right? Why do you keep defaulting back to old patterns, even though you've done the healing, right? This question, this is the question that I could not answer for a very long time. So I'm Kate, if we haven't met before, and I'm very excited that you're here. And if you haven't already understood, I'm pretty excited about being able to start to share my truth about this experience. I want to talk about this question from my own lived experiences, because this is something I learned intellectually, and I spent a long time here. I wasn't new to healing. I had done it all. I wasn't avoiding the work. I had put everything into it: time, money, energy, and a lot of hope. I did psychedelic therapies, ayahuasca, energy healers, pretty much any modality. I went hopping from different modalities to modality, looking for this thing that was missing that would help me translate my life. I wanted meaningful work. I wanted to actually enjoy doing the things that I was doing. I wanted intimacy and a really amazing divine relationship. I wanted to show up differently. I wanted to be more confident and actually be able to live what I knew. I wanted to live differently, choose differently, and have like a different life. And I genuinely believe that if I kept healing, like I genuinely believed if I kept doing more work, more inner work, something would finally click, that my life would finally catch up to how I knew I was internally. If I gained just enough awareness, if I did just another modality, and that was why I was always seeking modalities. So I was like, right, well, I'll go and find something different, so that this next ceremony, this next thing will be the thing. But it obviously wasn't. Every time I tried to change, every time I tried to step forward or take action or choose differently, show up differently, or move in the direction I wanted to go, my body would pull back. There would be fear, tightness, hesitation, or I would actually get sick. And I never really got sick, so it was just such a sign. I knew something was wrong. And because I didn't understand what was happening, I interpreted this reaction of my body, or the hesitation, the fear, that kind of experience. I interpreted this as the only way I knew how. I assumed I wasn't ready, that I still had more healing to do, that I still had to find something. There was something missing. I was broken. I was unfinished. I needed to find this unmet, undiscovered capital T trauma or something, because it was the only explanation I had as to why my life wasn't changing, why I couldn't actually do the things that I wanted to do or show up differently. So I went back inwards, more healing, more insight, more understanding. And here's the part that became unbearable over time. The more healing you do, the more awareness you gain of the life you're not living, of the standards that you can't keep, of the boundaries that you let people walk over, of the mismatch in values between the job that you're doing and the life that you're leading, or like the life that you want to be leading. And I can almost see it like a movie. I knew exactly what was happening, where it all came from, where my patterns were, the survival strategies, and all of my conditioning. Like I could see it all. And every time I still tried to take action, fear would show up or something would pull me back. But and nothing I was doing was working. It wasn't translating into a new experience, a new life. And I wasn't practicing confidence. I wasn't learning how to hold discomfort. I wasn't developing a capacity to feel uncomfortable or uncertain. I was gaining clarity, but not capacity or capability. And slowly, very painfully, my confidence eroded. It didn't grow. So every time I thought about applying for that new job, I felt uncertain, because if I applied for that job and fear showed up or resistance showed up, or I started to sabotage myself, or it felt too hard, or I got uncomfortable, that was a sign that there was something wrong. But if you read that sign incorrectly, then of course there's going to be something wrong. So I started questioning myself and doubting my abilities and wondering, actually personalizing it. So wondering what was wrong with me. And all of this keeps happening and you get more disappointed, but you also get really exhausted, emotionally drained at a like soul level, because you have worked so hard. And there's this quiet desperation of not really knowing what else to do, because healing had been incredibly powerful when I first started, but now it felt like it was taking more than it was giving. And this is the part that I want to hear you clearly. The experience is not personal failing. It's not because healing doesn't work. It's because there's a point where the healing space shifts. This is called the phase after healing. And it's where you've done enough inner work, awareness has been built, but the nervous system hasn't yet learned how to live from that experience. And without language, without this space, the phase after healing being clearly defined, people will start personalizing this struggle. They assume they're failing, and then they keep going back into more healing. And then they stay stuck managing themselves instead of living. The purpose of this masterclass is to interrupt this. It's to help you explain what's actually happening so that you can stop reading these moments as personal failure and start to really understand what your nervous system is responding to and what it actually needs next. Like why this work matters. And I will probably say this a number of times throughout the call. I mentioned it briefly in the previous slide, but I did want to pause here and actually talk about why this conversation really matters to me, but I also believe it actually matters to a lot of other people. Because when this phase, the phase after healing, keeps getting forgotten or goes unnamed, something really painful starts to happen. Because when people do a lot of healing, when you do a lot of healing and you gain your inner knowing and still can't translate it into real life, the trust erodes, your confidence erodes. Every time you try and move forward and pull back, a little more of your confidence goes. You retreat into yourself, a little bit of shame appears. People start organizing their lives around not being activated. They avoid having conversations that they know will cause issues. They don't apply for the job because the anxiety and the fear around it is just too much for the overtaxed nervous system to handle. That exhaustion level is soul level, usually adrenal fatigue and high cortisol. And a lot of bodies, a lot of women particularly, cannot handle more. They're already stressed to the max in their current life. So calling in more and doing things that are outside their comfort zone just stresses them out more, stresses their body out more. So they stay in relationships that don't fit because the repercussions are too much to handle. They're too exhausted already. And they keep themselves small. And it's not because they don't know any better, but because they're tired of collapsing. They're tired of healing. I don't want you to get the wrong idea about what I believe about healing. Healing is liberating, but at some point, it starts to feel expensive and draining and not beneficial. The longer this conversation gets missed in the healing spaces, people will keep spending more time, more money, and emotional energy they don't actually have trying to sort out the past instead of building the future that they actually want to be living. And when it keeps going on along long enough, the anger and the frustration that you already healed away comes back. And you get angry and frustrated, and there's a quiet despair. This was my personal experience of this situation. Yours might be different, but I'm just naming the experiences that I see a lot coming up for my clients and also for myself. And I reached a point where I realized that something had to change for me. I couldn't keep doing the same things hoping for a different outcome because I wasn't living my life. I was just managing myself. I was managing my triggers and my reactions and my nervous system. And that's not what I started healing for in the first place. I started healing because I wanted to have a bigger, more amazing, exciting life. And I really just wasn't living it. And as I've said earlier, this isn't a personal issue, it's a structural one because we send people into healing spaces, healers, ceremonies, retreats. There's endless coaching for different modalities online. There's breath work, and it is all beneficial. We all open our hearts, but then we leave people at the end of the ceremonies or wherever they go alone in the exact moments that they need to, that they're asking to show up differently in life. There's no guidance, support to help people cross this bridge. There's no developmental phase named. There's no place that someone can go, okay, right, I need to learn how to live from this place now, lived as the healed person. So that's why it becomes personal. I watched my friends grow and expand and live from their healed place. And when I wasn't doing this, I just assumed that it was my issue, that I wasn't healed enough or there was something wrong with me. And so this is why we keep personalizing the situation until we actually name this phase, until this phase has specific language, until integration, because it is integration. Integration is actually understood as a real developmental phase, not just an afterthought. I don't know about you, but I would go to ceremonies or healers and their comment as you were leaving was, make sure you integrate. Just make sure you integrate. And everyone would nod and we would leave, but there was no real clarity around what integration actually meant. No one really explained what the structure of it, how to implement it, how to be consistent, how to take the learnings from that experience and actually implement it into life. There was no implementation place. So most people just keep circling back into self-doubt and processing because they don't understand how to translate this into action. And this is why my work matters, and this is why I'm really excited about it. Because awareness without embodiment doesn't set you free. It leaves you awake but stuck, watching yourself not live the life you can feel that you want to be living and know you deserve to be living. And again, this is not a failure of healing. It's just a sign that we need the phase after healing, the integration phase, to be taken a lot more seriously than it really is. Okay, so we go to the next slide. Right. Healing changes how you understand yourself, but it doesn't automatically change how you live. Right, so to really understand why this phase exists, it's helpful to understand how change actually works. Our lives don't change because we want it to change. It changes when who we are being changes. And who we are being is shaped by our identity. So your identity is made up of the thoughts, your beliefs, your assumptions about yourself and about the world, your standards and your expectations you live from. That's your old self, right? That's how it is. That internal structure becomes your personality. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time, right? What you think and feel and believe and take action on is your personality, and your personality creates your lived reality. The way you think and respond and show up into the world. And this personality is your reality, right? So if you want a different life, you need to change your identity, your personality. It's not conceptual, it's just actually how it is. If you want to physically live a different life, you need to change your identity. Now, where does your identity come from? All right, so most of us, our identity wasn't created consciously. It was formed through survival in childhood. And it was shaped by your parents' expectations, your environment, culture, religion, emotional groups, your friendship groups. And what it is basically you learned, I behave a certain way and I receive love. I behave a certain this way and people don't laugh at me. So you learned how to stay safe in an environment where they were training you to behave certain ways. So this is where people pleasing comes from. You don't decide to be a people pleaser. It just was like, okay, well, you got praise and you got love, and the expectation was like you sorted out your mother's emotional needs, right? You behaved a certain way and everybody around you was more amicable or friendly, and that was that. You veered from that and you got negative feedback. So you were okay, like, well, I'll just hang out here. So you don't choose to freeze, you don't choose to abandon yourself, but these are patterns that your body learned, your body, not your mind, or both, but mostly your body learned when you're a child. And these are pattern responses. And so this is where healing comes in, right? So the purpose of doing healing is to bring awareness to these unconscious ways of living, to these survival patterns and early experiences, to your wounds and your triggers, and uncover the unconscious. Carl Jung talks about this. Make the unconscious conscious. To understand where they came from, to give support and compassion, and to soften them, to loosen their grip, so you're no longer triggered by situations and experiences from the past. Now, this is quite clear. So healing, whatever modality that you use, whether that's talk therapy, psychedelic therapy, energy healers, or your own self-study, healing helps you see the masks that you've been wearing. And when I say masks, these survival adaptations, right? They are all masks. We perform to a certain level. Like when we're with our friends, we behave a certain way. When we're with our family or work, these are the survival adaptations, the roles that we step into. So we call them masks, right? The persona, like an actor stepping into a role. They are layered upon your true version of yourself. Healing helps you understand what are your roles, how do you default, like all of these unconscious things are hidden and suppressed. And so you move them through your body. And as you do that, it changes how you understand yourself. It gives you a new sense of being. You can feel that you now who you used to be no longer fits. You have a language and awareness that you didn't have before. So this is the whole purpose of what you've been doing, right? But this is what interesting. Most people are not taught that healing doesn't automatically retrain the nervous system to live as a different version of you. So you can understand where all this comes from, and you can have great awareness of what's going on in your body. But it doesn't tell these roles, these survival adaptation roles, or the nervous system to stand down. Understanding something is not the same as embodying it, living from that place. Awareness does not give you the capacity to live from that place. So the healed version of you, this internal idea of what you would like to live from, remains conceptual. It's a felt sense, an understanding, and knowing. It's theory until you practice living from that place. And this is where it gets confusing, right? So until your thoughts change in real moments, until your beliefs are tested in real situations, until your standards show up in behaviors, until your nervous system has new evidence, it's still theory. And this goes back to what I was saying before and why I brought this whole topic up. Your identity is your thoughts, beliefs, and actions showing up that create your personality, and your personality creates your lived reality. So if you haven't changed your thoughts, your beliefs, your understandings, your behaviors, and your personality hasn't changed, then your life can't change. If you don't practice living from that place, from the healed version of you, then you cannot start living from that place. You haven't trained your nervous system to trust that the new identity, the new beliefs, the new behaviors, the new actions are safe. This is why you can understand yourself so deeply and still find that life is the same. And the reason it's the same is because you haven't changed your behaviors to match the new self. Okay, so we now get into the core part of this masterclass. This is the question that everyone wants to know. So actually, what happens when we try and live differently? Slowing this part down, because this is the core, right? So far, we've talked about healing, awareness, and insight. What I want to do now is explain very simply what actually happens when you try and live differently from the real, authentic, inner knowing of you, because this is the part that confuses most people. And the simplest way to explain it is this. You try to change and it backfires. It doesn't work. And it's not because you're broken, but because you're reading your nervous system signals incorrectly. That's it. That's the core of the entire conversation. Okay, so let's dive into what I mean by this. When you try and do something that would genuinely move you forward in life, help you up-level your life, right? Like having the conversation, setting the boundary, being more visible, posting that shit online, choosing yourself and raising your standards, your body has a reaction. Your nervous system has a reaction. Discomfort shows up, fear shows up. It might feel like tightness, hesitation, self-doubt, the urge to pull back or shut down or sabotage yourself. It might show up before you act to stop you acting, or it will show up after you've already done the thing. But the critical moment here is the way you interpret this reaction, this feeling of discomfort. You interpret discomfort as a problem. You assume something has gone wrong. Fear showed up. And the reason for this is if you've done a lot of inner work, this interpretation is what you have been guided to do in healing. Healing spaces guide you to feel discomfort in a different way. It means something needs to be processed. Something needs to be analyzed and unpacked and explored. What's underneath this feeling? Why did it show up? Why is fear here? That's what healing teaches you to do. In the phase where after healing and you're trying to take action from your lived identity, that discomfort is not a healing signal. It's not something has gone wrong. It's a developmental signal. It's your nervous system saying, we don't know what you're doing here. We don't have data to say that this is safe yet. We haven't learned how to hold this safely. So for example, if you were in a meeting room and there was 200 people, all eyes on you, how are you going to feel? If you haven't trained for this, if you haven't decided that that is something that you're comfortable with, having 200 pairs of eyes on you will be uncomfortable. Like the nervous system's like, visibility used to be dangerous. We haven't had an experience in our lives, in the nervous system, in our body, to tell us that having 200 pairs of eyes on us is now safe. And that's the whole training phase. So nothing has gone wrong. But because you read that signal through the lens of healing, your response is always going to be to go backwards instead of moving forwards. You go back into more processing, more understanding, more inner work, trying to feel into why it showed up in the first place. And this is where the loop forms. So what happens is okay, so you start healing and you want to live, you take action. That action is not met with ease, which is what a lot of people that have done a lot of healing expect. It's met with discomfort, fear. The interpretation is incorrect. So you interpret that as something is a problem, and then you go back into healing. And every time you do that cycle, that loop, your awareness keeps increasing, but your lived confidence decreases because you keep knowing more without actually living differently. So the gap between who you understand yourself to be and how you're actually living just keeps getting wider and wider and wider. More awareness, less confidence, more clarity, less momentum. Over time, something very quiet but very damaging starts to happen. Your confidence erodes, and every time you pull back, your system just keeps learning change is unsafe. It just keeps going. Well, fear showed up, change is unsafe, I don't want to do that again. And you just keep living a smaller and smaller life. And it's a cumulative cost that a lot of people are not talking about. And this is the key point, right? Healing was never designed to do this part, but no one was talking about what you needed to do afterwards. So healing helps you understand yourself. It helps you see the patterns, helps you take off this internal mask or this mask internally, but you have to do the living. It doesn't live for you. And as I've said before, this requires a different phase, a different orientation, and different kind of support. And that phase is what most people never get language for. So instead of recognizing that what's actually happening, we all personalize it and sit there thinking like, why can I see the life so clearly and still not live that yet? What's wrong with me? Why do I keep collapsing? And again, nothing is wrong with you. You've just reached the point where insight has to become capacity. You have to train yourself to live from that place. So if this masterclass does anything at all, I want you to know this. I want you to stop reading discomfort as failure and start seeing it as information. Because the moment that interpretation changes, everything else can move forward from that place. Okay, so this point really matters. The moment you consciously decide not to abandon yourself when discomfort appears. We've covered a lot already in this masterclass, so I want to bring this together really clearly. The question isn't actually why change backfires. The real question is why you keep defaulting back to who you were, even though you've done a lot of healing. And the answer is simple, even if it hasn't felt that way. You default back because your nervous system hasn't yet learned or hasn't yet been trained to live from the healed identity. And as we discussed before, identity is made up of your beliefs, your behaviors, your thoughts, and your understandings that change your personality, that change your lived reality. So if your beliefs and your actions are still of your old self, then you're going to keep repeating the old life, right? And as I said, it's not because you haven't healed enough, not because you haven't done enough, but because you haven't practiced living as her yet. The woman you've healed into has different standards, different boundaries, different beliefs, different ways of showing up in the world. What is she going to tolerate? What is she accepting? How do people treat her? And I know you've tried to move towards her, right? This is the whole point of this conversation. You've taken steps, you've tried to speak up, you've tried to choose differently and live as her, raise the bar, raise your standards. And when you did that, your body reacted or your nervous system reacted. But because you have been trained in healing, not living, you read that signal as a healing signal, not a living signal. So instead of moving forward, everyone went backwards. You went backwards. And as we discussed before, that gap between who you know yourself to be and how you keep living just keeps getting wider. This is where this slide comes in. This is where the choice point comes in. Because at some point, the question stops being, what do I need to heal? And becomes, am I willing to live as the person I already am? This is a decision, a choice point, a choice moment. It's not a motivational shift and it's not a mindset shift. A decision to stop abandoning yourself when discomfort appears. So here's an example. An athlete doesn't train because it feels comfortable. They train because they know where they're going. They expect discomfort. They expect resistance. They expect moments where their body is like, holy fuck, this is hard. But they don't interpret that feeling that their body is giving them as failure. They interpret it as part of their training program, their regimen. And I was watching the Olympics the other day and I saw this woman, right? She recently broke her leg, like 10 months ago, she broke her leg. She had surgery on this leg, right? She rehabbed it. Rehabbed it? Oh, she did rehab. I'll say that. She did rehab for months. 10 months ago, like it was ridiculous. And she won 2 gold medals in some downhill ski race, slalom, I think. And I bring this up because we can all see what training looks like when we take it out of the healing space. We can see a skier getting up every morning at 5 a.m. to go and race hills because it's before the ski runs on groomed slopes, right? They travel the world, they get up, they do the training, they run, like they eat health, like there are certain sacrifices these people are making to be the best in the world at what they want to do. It's not an easy life and it's not for the faint-hearted, but they have set a goal, they had a vision of who they wanted to be and they went after it. And this is the choice point. They decided something. She decided that she was going to get back up. She wasn't going to play the victim. She wasn't going to let another Olympic slide. So she put everything she had into this. That was the choice moment. For healing, when we come back to healing, is the choice point is the same. You have decided you want to stop looking at the past, and now you want to look towards the horizon. You want to stop looking inwards for more explanation and understanding of yourself and start living from this awareness that you already have. This choice point, this decision moment shifts you from the healing lens into the living lens, from processing to practicing, right? From uncovering to training, from what's gone wrong to can I stay with myself here? The decision doesn't have to remove fear, and it actually won't remove fear, but it changes the direction of your life. Because once this choice has been made, a completely different kind of support system becomes necessary. And it also enables you to start looking at situations much clearer and cleaner in a very different way to when you're healing. There's like a fork in the road, right? Healing is here, living is here. And we're looking at them completely differently. And without that, I believe quite strongly that change will feel a lot harder than it needs to be. So this is probably the point where you want to get to. It's the obvious question, right? Everyone's like, okay, well, how do I stay with myself? How do I retrain my nervous system? How do I actually enable my body to accept change so that I can move forward? So going back to the previous slide, I want to say this clearly. This phase, this point, how do you stay with yourself, only works, in my opinion, if you've already made the decision. The decision that you're not abandoning yourself anymore just because discomfort shows up, right? I'm not abandoning myself just because you're angry with me or you're disappointed in me. The life I want to lead, the woman I want to be, the authenticity I want to share, the way I show up in the world is worth more to me than your disappointment. Without that decision, everything I'm about to say will collapse under pressure. Because staying with yourself is not willpower, it's a skill. And it requires, as I said, a different orientation, a different lens to what most of us were taught in healing. Okay, so this is the first point. To change, to actually stay with yourself, is you need capacity. Your nervous system needs capacity. If you are already stressed, exhausted, overwhelmed, or stretched thin, asking your nervous system to hold more will shut you back down. So this is the first point. And this, I learned this the hard way. Staying with yourself isn't about forcing growth. It's getting your nervous system on board to trust you that you're calling in, what you're calling in is safe. Moving out of the fight, flight, freeze, fawn state into the parasympathetic nervous system. The second thing that really matters here is knowing exactly how you abandon yourself. Not in theory, but in behavior. So some people will abandon themselves like they will people please, right? They'll do everything for everybody else. Or they'll become the martyr and they'll like that they're so exhausted, but yet they're still ensuring that everybody else is comfortable but them. Some people will freeze or fawn, so you'll find yourself like pandering to everybody else's needs or collapsing into victim mode. Another interesting point is expansion will always activate your nervous system pattern. This is something that a lot of people are not aware of, right? The very nature of change, the very nature of expansion from definition is moving beyond what you already know, beyond what's familiar. So you actually know you're going to react. If you are trying to change and do something different, you know you're going to react. Expansion will always activate your default patterns. And this is where the way you look at discomfort, the way you look at this nervous system reaction around fear comes in. This is where you've made your decision point. So you've now decided you're looking at something differently. And this is where the biggest shift comes in. When discomfort shows up, you no longer assume something has gone wrong. Because your nervous system is actually really working, right? It's working, it's functioning, it's saying, hey, I need new proof. We don't have evidence here yet. So because you've made the decision that you're going to stay with yourself, you're not looking at analyzing this or fixing this discomfort anymore. You're learning how to change your relationship with this fear, this discomfort. And because you've changed lens into now looking at it through the living lens, discomfort just means data, not danger. So the moment you stop looking at this nervous system reaction as fear or a stop sign, your system can start learning new behavior. We're not treating your nervous system response as anything that's gone wrong. I've said that before, right? Nothing has gone wrong. It's just an experience. You've made sure your nervous system is comfortable and safe. You have read your nervous system's reaction as information, not something negative. And then what you need to start doing is offering that experience, that feeling of your nervous system compassion in order to stay comfortable in this position. The first question is am I in physical danger? And if I'm not in physical danger, can I stay here long enough for my body to recognize that fear or whatever I'm fearful of is not going to hurt me? And then this is where self-compassion comes in. You just hold yourself in that position, acknowledging what's happening. I feel fear. This is scary. Getting on stage and speaking in front of 200 people is scary, but I've decided that I'm not abandoning myself. I'm growing, and this is what I've decided to do. Can I offer myself support here? And I use a different modality in my work, but you could simply use the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is the Hawaiian prayer, which is, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. Because your nervous system is actually doing its job. We're not condemning it, we're not shaming it, we're just going to ask it to see if it can stand down long enough for you to survive disappointment, survive the judgment. Takeaway from this is once you start to see this behavior in real time, and this as an external part of you, I can see myself in real time doing this. So what might usually have been like a day or so meltdown or something like took me out for a while now becomes a shorter response. I can still see myself doing it, but I don't do it for as long. Or I might do it for 10 minutes and then I can pull myself out of it. And eventually what will happen is you will start to see that behavior and you'll be like, not today. I've got shit to do. I don't have time to have a meltdown default back into who I used to be. The same as with sabotage. Like I love reading fantasy books, obviously the biggest escape possible. And so when situations come up and my nervous system is activated, I would just go and read, right? Completely disassociate and go and read a fantasy novel. Now, I still do that, but I know what I'm doing. And I don't do it for as long. I'm not shaming myself into that. I can see what's happening. And I have the ability to shorten that, interrupt it faster, give myself 15 minutes to read a book, calm down and go back out, or actually choose not to do that. But that's what actually having the language for what's happening helps. So how do you actually stay with yourself? So staying with yourself isn't about knowing the right thing. It's about having the capacity, the awareness, and the support to practice this over and over again when it really matters, so that you are able to slowly, incrementally move into new behaviors, new beliefs that will inevitably change your personality, that will help change your life. Change doesn't look like confidence. It looks like staying even when you're scared. Just a short point on this one. I know a lot of healing spaces talk about alignment and feeling it and going after what you want, but change doesn't look like confidence. It doesn't feel easy. It will activate your nervous system and you will feel fear. Real change is almost never comfortable and it will rarely feel good in the moment. You don't wake up one day feeling ready, certain, or fearless. You learn this by doing things while fear is present. And that's why I really talked into the choice point moment, because it matters. Because once you've decided that you're not abandoning yourself anymore, discomfort stops being a reason to retreat and starts being part of the practice. Change happens through repetition, not readiness, because you'll never feel ready. You have to create momentum and then readiness will appear. It's like anyone going on stage will always tell you that they feel fear, excitement, but fear at the same time, right? But once they get on stage, their nerves calm down and they remember why they want to be on stage. they actually then like dive into the experience and come off really exhilarated. But you have to move before you feel ready. This question comes up a lot, right? If this is so natural, why is it so hard to do alone? It does feel natural. It's just normal parts of change. Why does it feel so hard to do alone? And this is the part that often gets missed. Healing is mostly an internal process. It is contained. You go away, you go and do your processes, you can journal at home, but like a lot of it is private. And for the many of us, the processes that you go and do are supported in full containers, environments where there is support. People are there to help you. Very few of these experiences are external. But once you start trying to live differently, show up differently, live your healing, it has consequences. Other people feel that. Your relationships, people respond to it. If you push back, if you stop over functioning, if you're trying to show up as someone different to who they expect you to be, they are going to question what's going on. When you stop people pleasing or when you stop managing other people's disappointment, when you try and raise your standards, something that used to fit no longer fits. That life doesn't fit. People are going to react to this, right? And again, none of it means that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that you've changed the rules of how you show up. And not everyone will be on board with this. So firstly, you actually need to be quite comfortable with the different circumstances. So some people will come with you. Some people will like that you're changing and growing. Other people will really dislike it and keep pushing back and asking you to go back to who you were. And other people will fall away. And you have to really be comfortable in that space. And again, it comes back down to this choice moment. You've made a decision that you are more important than anybody else. And if you are in relationships or you're a parent or like you've got dependents, that's probably a hard call to make. That's why this phase feels harder than healing ever did. Because now you're not just working with your inner world. You're having to navigate real world dynamics with people that you love, attachments, expectations, while your nervous system is still learning that this new behavior is safe. And this is why a lot of people just don't follow through with this. And this is why a lot of people will start questioning themselves. Why can't I do this? Well, there's a lot going on here. The question really comes down to is a lot of people had a lot of support when they were doing their inner work. They went to see energy healers, retreats where the container was there for them. There was support. But now that we move into this separate phase after healing, where it's actually harder to hold, there isn't as much support there as it should be. The phase after healing is the phase where change becomes visible. And visibility always creates responses. And from personal experiences, and in my opinion, support here really matters. It's like having training wheels on, having help while you're discovering yourself and how you show up in the world. Learning how to live as this new woman without collapsing or retreating or abandoning yourself under pressure when it really matters, when there's consequences. You can do this work alone. But the real question isn't that you can do it alone. How long is it going to take? And how much self-doubt and erosion of self-confidence happens along the way before you actually learn to stabilize your nervous system, before you start moving in the direction where you want to go, before life pulls back. Okay, so I want to talk about my course or my container. A Light in the Dark, the Integration Method, which is a 12-week developmental container specifically designed for the phase after healing. Now, I didn't create this course because I wanted another offering or because I thought the world needed another course or a container. I created this because I was exhausted doing this alone. I had done the healing and I understood myself, and I had done the ceremonies and the retreats and the this, and I'd spent time, money, and energy growing internally, knowing that I deserved a better life. But every time I tried to actually move towards this life, show up as this woman, apply for a new job, do the things, go on dates, like my nervous system would light up. And as I said before, I'd panic and I would pull back. And there was nowhere, and there was no one that understood what I was doing, why it wasn't working. Like people around me just didn't understand. And I found myself alone too many times in situations where it really would have liked someone to cheer me on, help me forward. The people around me weren't my cheerleaders. My workplace loved the old version of me, and my relationships around me didn't meet my needs, and they were built around who I used to be. So when I started changing, it was lonely as hell. Probably even lonelier than healing itself, because I was on retreat with people. I went in ceremonies and people were living the same existence, but I wanted more than just endless healing. I wanted to live from my new understanding. I wanted to be the woman I had dreamt about, that I'd written in my journal. I wanted to show up as this thought leader, this healed version of me. And the course exists because this phase needs support. Like, not more insight, not more processing, but people need support when they're doing the thing. So the container is a 12-week developmental container, right? Designed for the phase after healing. And it's where you stop unpacking the past and start translating it into lived reality. So how it works is we work with your default survival roles and adaptations. We learn your response to fear and the moments you would normally abandon yourself. And instead of analyzing all these behaviors and thoughts and all of these things, we start practicing. We start staying, we start teaching the nervous system that it is safe doing the things that we want to do in order to create the new life we want to live, in order to live from this new identity. The purpose of this program is to give you structure, guidance, accountability, and a room full of people who won't tell you to shrink back. They are only invested in you and your growth. I always liken it to like training wheels. You don't use training wheels because you're incapable of riding a bike. You use them as a developmental phase. You use them because you're learning something new. And once your nervous system learns, you don't need these training wheels anymore. But you keep using the framework for the rest of your life. Because as I said before, the very definition of expansion means that you go beyond what you already know. So you will always come up against your nervous edge of your nervous system. And the framework that I have designed is meant to be a repeatable framework that means that you can use this for the rest of your life. It's like a hack to growing, right? Because if you can work out how to change quickly and safely, you don't have to like spend 2 weeks preparing for a conversation. You don't have to default back to old behaviors for a couple of weeks before you actually do the thing that you want to do. Because this isn't a one and done experience. You have to keep doing this. And growth always asks more of you. That's what growth is. So to learn how to make decisions in real time, to hold yourself through fear so that you can raise your standards, not once, but 20 times, because where you are now and where you want to be, she's raised her standards. You're not going to go and raise your standards to the same standards overnight. So you raise your standards and you sit with it and you get comfortable with it. And you raise your standards again. So you can, and I'm just so excited about this process, is because you can stop circling the same patterns for years because you know what's going on, you know how your nervous system's going to respond, and you can just incrementally keep moving, keep updating this new identity, keep changing your behaviors, being more visible, being open to more, so that you're not managing yourself. You're not holding yourself in this holding pattern because you don't want to react again, because you know you're going to react. This is the core thing. You know you're going to react. So being able to hold yourself in this place of reactivity safely, consistently, means that change is just going to be so fluid. It's going to move. It's not going to be easy. It will still be scary, but it means that you don't interpret what's going on incorrectly. You have the right language, the right theory, and the right framework to deal with it. And this is why I'm so excited about the course and the container. If you would like more information about my container, A Light in the Dark, the integration method, you can respond to an email and I will either give you the information, I can give you the link to the webpage, or I'm actually happy to have a personal conversation with you about the course if you feel called. You can book directly just through me on an email, or I do have a link that I could include if you would like. I have enjoyed every moment of this masterclass, and I hope it was very helpful in giving you the language that you need in order to change your life, giving you the language to understand what fear actually means and how to move beyond it. It's been a pleasure, and I'm open for any conversation if anyone would like to reach out.